everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sterling Live. My name is Caitlin Brower, and I'm Sterling's social media manager. Super excited today. I have two phenomenal guests with me, and we are going to be discussing leadership and guidance and tips on leading in a global organization and during uncertain times. So today I have Beth Sarabia, Head of Client and Candidate Care for Sterling, and Darlene, also Dar, that's what I'll be calling her throughout the show, Miranda, VP of Product. So thank you both for joining me today on this episode of Sterling Live. So I'm going to let you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves and share a little bit for our audience too. So Dar, can you go ahead and get us started?
Oh, happy to. And thanks, Caitlin. Really appreciate that. So I'm a VP of product here, and I've been with Sterling for about a year and a half, working across a number of different product areas. Most recently, I've been working with our drug and health services team, primarily focused on COVID testing solutions for companies. It's been an interesting year for all of us, but given our end-to-end solutions and our platform, we really wanted to help our customers navigate through this time and continue to focus on creating safe work environments. So we launched our COVID testing solutions earlier in the year and continue to evolve as the landscape around us evolves. So, and how I like to say, we are certainly not bored. So it's been interesting. And of course, I have to do a plug for the products. If you do have any questions or needs, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Absolutely. And it's such a great tie into, being a leader, because you've been a great leader in that initiative. So thank you so much for introducing yourself there. So Beth, can you go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Hi. So happy to be here. My name is Beth Sarabia. I started with Sterling back in March of 2020. So right when we became COVID pandemic central. And my job here really is to lead a wonderful team of people that are global, both for EMEA and also for Asia and the US. And so we provide support. And so our number one goal is to create meaningful interactions with our clients and our candidates and be helpful. And so really we're the team you call when you don't know who else to call. And we will either find you the answer or help you right there on the spot. But we're changing our name to Care instead of Support. Because that's really what we provide. We care for our clients and candidates and try to make sure that the journeys that they're on, whether it's COVID testing or background checks, is smooth.
Yeah, no, that's great. So thank you both for introducing yourselves and providing a little bit more information regarding your roles here at Sterling. Super important for sure. So we do have a hello coming in from Facebook. So hello to everyone that is joining us right now. If you want our audience watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, please go ahead and ask these wonderful guest questions. You're going to listen, they're going to provide some great detail throughout this show. But if you guys have any questions, please go ahead in the comment section and ask them, and I will field them to these two as I see fit. So why don't we go ahead and get into this, because this, me personally, I'm always looking for leadership advice. I, truly aspire to be like the two of you one day, leading teams, being super successful. So I'm super excited for this conversation. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first area I want to talk about, is, your journey, the evolution of becoming a leader for you two. So I have two questions here. And Beth, we can start with you on this question. So can you just briefly touch upon your journey of becoming a leader?
Sure. I feel really old now because I realize how long it's been. It's been about 30 years, to be honest. And, I kind of summarize it into a couple of key points. One is perform, reform, and help others. And the way I look at that is, ever since I started work, I never went into work going, I have to lead them. I have to be a manager. I went into work and tried to do the very best I could. So performing is important. You have to be a top performer. You have to, distinguish yourself and differentiate yourself. And then the second part of that is reform. So once you're really good at doing the work given to you, find better ways to do the work. And so look around you and look for areas of opportunities. Don't wait for someone to come knock on your door and ask you to do a task.
Right.
Show leadership and ambition on that skill. And then finally, help others, because really the best leaders are the ones that put themselves second and put their team first. So once you start helping others and learning how to coach, learning how to mentor, and building trust within the people, whether it's your coworker, someone above you, someone that is subordinate to you. It doesn't matter. It's all about people, right? So it's really about, and that's, by the way, one of our main core values is people first. But I think it's really all about helping other people. And when you get good at that, you're actually building trust to where you can take it to the next level, which is they'll accept critique from you because they trust you.
Right.
They know you're there to actually help them and it's genuine. So I would really, in my career, I did that.
Yeah.
And I constantly do that. And I'm constantly reassessing myself and saying, where can I be better? You might be doing this for 30 years, but no one is ever the smartest person in the room all the time.
Yeah.
And I think as a leader, you just need to know that and count on the smart people around you and trust them to do their job. And make sure you have the right people in the right spots.
Yeah, and I truly liked the 3 areas of focus right there that you outlined, because maybe some people are sitting down and might think that it's overly complex and they can't be successful as a leader. But if you really just break it down and narrow it down to small areas and 3 like you provided, it's definitely doable and people can be successbeen So thank you for that. Dar, please let us know about your journey on becoming a leader.
Yeah, and it's not too different than Beth's, right? I've been involved in product for many years. Actually, before it was even called product, when it was like, is it marketing? Is it technology? We're not sure what this is. But I've always been really fascinated by solving problems or customer needs through technology and services. And it's funny, Beth, like you, I didn't set out thinking I want to manage people and lead teams. For me, it came as a natural consequence of growth, which for product folks is usually an evolution from individual contributor with growing areas of focus to more strategic team leadership roles. I love the team leadership aspect. It quickly became one of the most rewarding things about work for me. And like me, a lot of people equate the opportunity to lead teams with professional evolution. But I have to stress that it's really a great responsibility to lead others.
I love that.
And you have to know that the work that you do, it's not just about you. It's about creating the right conditions and directing others so that they can produce their best work. So my journey has really been around continuing to evolve that, in addition to the contributions that I make in a product role.
Yeah, I honestly, I truly did love that, because I think you're right. Some people are just like, well, listen, if I'm going to advance my career, like I have to become a leader. It's just a natural process. But like you said, it's really, truly an opportunity that we have to embrace. So I really do like that. That was such a good response. So Beth, I know you touched upon those 3 areas that you discussed about your journey becoming a leader. And you discussed a couple of things that you do with your teams, for yourself, things like that. But are there any like specific practices, specific strategies that you've followed over the years that have gotten to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a long time ago, I had a mentor who told me, you really have to be the champion of your own career. It's not enough to just hope somebody taps you on the shoulder and gives you an opportunity.
Yeah.
You have to really communicate what you like, where your desires are. And maybe you'll find even opportunities that you hadn't thought about before. And another one is kind of, I almost always say yes to things. I almost always say yes to everything, at least at work, because I realized a long time ago that if my inherent reaction is going to be uncomfortable, that's a good thing. So whenever I get too comfortable, I take on another task, or I take on another aspect of my career or job, because comfort is not your friend if you're really trying to grow your career. If you're really trying to perform your best, comfort's not your friend. You need to be uncomfortable so you can learn something. And then also, I think the biggest thing that I see when I mentor people, especially young people, is that they feel so afraid to fail. And I've never learned anything from being successful at something. I've only learned from the things I didn't do so well.
That's a great point.
So you can't be better unless you're willing to take a little bit of risk and not be afraid to fail. I mean, you don't want to take crazy risks, but but you do want to be brave. And I think as a leader, I consider myself the calm in the storm, right? So I take the approach of let's be the calm in the storm when everything gets crazy, whether it's, leading through uncertainty, whether it's organizational things, hurricanes, weather, whatever it is that your challenge is at work, be the person who's the calm in the storm. Don't freak out, stay calm, let people know they can count on you to give sound, fair advice. Be courageous to make the decisions you need to. Choose your team over individual needs, and really show some empathy. The one thing that I really have learned later in my career was that you can be kind and strong at the same time.
Yes.
Being a strong leader doesn't mean you have to give up kindness. It means that you should be kind in what you're doing, because people don't go to work to fail. They go to work to be successful. Right. And if they're failing, it's your job as a leader to help them succeed. That's our jobs. So servant leadership is everything. We're here to remove roadblocks and to help guide them.
Yeah, I love it. And listen, I hope our audience right now has a pad and paper or a pencil and pad, because you guys are just handing out knowledge left and right here. And we're only 11 minutes into the conversation. So handing it off to you now, Dar. So any best practices, specific strategies that you followed over the past couple of years?
Yeah, no, and listen, Beth touched on a lot of the stuff that, I think about too. Like, Beth, you're spot on with a lot of the stuff that you're reflecting on here. But, I never focused on the next title change or the next promotion. I see this a lot kind of with people earlier in their tenure. I just didn't let that be the driver for me. I really let my interest, my passion, my curiosity for learning and problem solving and delivering real results. I just let that drive my evolution into leadership. And it served me well, right? Because it really facilitated me taking on new challenges that I knew were going to take me into unknown territory. Beth, you hit on that, right? So that meant that I had to be super open to learning. Along the way, you really have to stay humble. And know that learning must be coupled with being comfortable with vulnerability. You're going to have to expose it. You know what? You don't know everything about everything, and great. Yes, that's true. So showing that in yourself helps others become more comfortable with going on that journey with you.
Yeah, and I think that's great, because even, Dar, you said this before when you spoke about being in product, but it was called a million things in the past. A title is a title. That could be different. That's not what you guys are striving for. When you're striving to become a leader, you're looking to learn and advance your career. So I think those are great insights that you provided there, and truly, truly important for our audience to hear that. So listen, first two questions out the gate, you guys are already providing such great insight. So I love it. Let's continue the conversation though, and let's take a global spin on things. So Sterling is a global organization, and Beth, you lead a large global team within our large global organization. So I want to ask you two questions in regards to that. So can you describe what it's like to lead a global team within a larger global organization like Sterling?
Sure. I've been privileged to lead a global team for the last 15 years. Even though this is my first year with Sterling, it really is the same in the sense that we've all heard the method of, think globally, act locally. But one thing I will start out by saying is that when you're a global leader, whatever your style is, whether it works or doesn't work, is going to be magnified.
Yeah.
So you should know that. So if what you're doing is working, globally, you'll probably be very successful. If what you're doing is not so great, then working globally is just going to magnify those flaws. And, the thing I absolutely loved and love still about working globally is because I think it's so important as a leader that you get to know your people and you create something called, what I call anyway, professional intimacy. People want to be seen, intimacy, right? They want to be seen. So when you're working with different parts of the globe and all these different regions, you have to first just listen, just be quiet and listen and absorb and get to know people, get to know what motivates them, and understand that those cultural differences, you really need to embrace those and embrace the diversity and challenge yourself to listen and start thinking of how that can help your team. Because I may have one culture who is very process driven. I may have another culture who is very amiable and has the best customer service skills. I may have another culture who is absolutely no nonsense, get it done. And if you sit there and you go, okay, they're like this because this is how they grew up. This is their culture. I understand it. I respect it. And now, how can we put our strengths together? Because no sense focusing on opportunities or weaknesses. Focus on strengths. Look at those strengths. Take those silos, join them so that you're all marching to the same drum. I think the biggest mistake that global leaders make is they try to make everybody the same around the globe. And I don't know about you, but I'm one of 5 kids. And we're not the same.
I'm with you on that one. I'm one of 4, all opposite.
So I wouldn't dare do that to my team.
No.
I want to know who they are, embrace what's different and unique about them, and then draw those strengths off so that we can have one mission and get that mission done by helping each other and filling in the gaps for each other.
Yeah, so I really liked that response. And one of the key areas that I took away, and I've actually heard this from other global leaders in the past as a piece of advice, and clearly it is a piece to take away because you're saying it now too, is that just sit back and listen, not try to like come in and just, create all of this stuff or, try to create like new opportunities and identify weaknesses. Sitting back and listening can actually make you such a better leader and really help you learn a lot. So loved that point there. And speaking of that, so that is a great piece of advice for someone maybe just starting out in a new global leadership role. Do you have any other key pieces of advice for someone who might be entering into a new role like this? Yeah,
you really need to act as if you're in the cube next to them because you've got thousands of miles between you. And I remember having a customer once years ago that said, and they always wanted someone to sit on site with them. And I wasn't able to do that in my personal life. And I told them, in 90 days, if you don't feel like I'm in the cube next to you, fire me. And we made it happen. And that's what they said to my leader later was that, oh, she doesn't need to be here. She's so accessible. So be accessible and make it so that they feel connected, even though there's miles and miles apart. And I think to do that, you have to over communicate. When you're dealing with people on different time zones, different cultures, different work schedules, everything, you really need to over communicate and you need to be brave to be clear and concise on your decisions. I think at the base of every good leader is that they know how to build relationships and trust.
Yeah.
And if you're working for the right company like Sterling, where trust is a core value, and you live it every day, then people will feel connected no matter where they are, no matter where they sit, or what dog goes in their Zoom video. I mean, you really have to embrace the fact that distance means nothing if you do it right.
Yeah, and it's a great piece of advice because even, take away the global aspect of things where we are right now, as the world is shifting and we're in remote working environments, we might not be able to sit with someone directly for the foreseeable future. So it's a great piece of advice there, looking at a global organization, but then even too, looking at a location or an organization that has people close by. So really did appreciate that. So Dar, let's move into some questions for you in regards to product management, effective leadership, everything like that. So you were on a podcast a couple of months back. You were on the This is Product Management podcast. It was a phenomenal episode. You again provided so many great insights for the audience that listened to that. So if you are watching right now, please go listen to Dar's episode of This is Product Management podcast. It was really good. So I thought you brought up a lot of interesting things there, and especially around using product management as a guide for being an effective leader. So touching on that, what are some of the similarities between product management and leadership?
Absolutely. And thanks for listening to that. I appreciate the plug for that. That was a lot of fun to do. So, as we grow to be product leaders, we need to approach leading product teams in the same way we might approach product management, right? And there are a lot of similarities, and I've definitely learned a few things along the way that continue to be relevant. But people look to you for product answers and direction, but they also look to you for answers around guiding their growth and development and what it means to be a good product manager. And you won't have all the product answers. And guess what? You certainly will not have all the team development answers, but the team constantly looks to you for clarity.
Right.
Product management is fundamentally a role that is about not having clarity, about taking the uncertain ideas or concepts and bringing some certainty, or at least minimizing that ambiguity and risk, right? So this applies in leadership principles too. You need to do a couple things, right? Or I suggest doing a couple things here, like create the environment where people can grow while you're growing yourself, right? Because you need to push yourself and continue to learn and evolve. The second thing I always kind of advise is, don't just position learning and growth as a nice to have. You have to require it, and this one's, can be sometimes a little bit hard to do, but start small. Just, start with like, hey, we're going to master this one thing. Like, let's just get really good at defining customer needs in a certain way or telling the product story in a certain way. And then, continue to try new and different things. And then utilize the fundamentals of product management, such as, encourage teams to try new things and iterate, right? Okay, something didn't work. Okay, let's, iterate the next thing, et cetera, et cetera. Right. And I've actually done this with development plans, right? Where, we pick a skill, we kind of pick a baseline, an MVP, if you will, then we move on to the next thing and the next iteration and the next version, right? So it's proven to be helpful in leading teams as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's great. And it's such a unique concept. I think sometimes people look at leadership just kind of like holistically, and it's just like, this is what you have to do that. But taking a different spin on it, even it's not just you working in product management, like other people can take that advice. And I really think it's great for sure. So you touched on the, like professional development, like using it for something like that. Are there any other examples that maybe you've done recently or the past couple of years where you have used product management to push that effective leadership?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. So, with product, this can kind of be tricky territory because there isn't a consistent definition of the role and what makes a successful product team across different companies, right? So I start really with dispelling the myths, like everyone knows this product stuff so much better than I do. As I mentioned, product can be a vague field in many ways. So it's really easy to get bogged down with all sorts of things that lead to good product management practices. So I try to really stop the pattern of getting overwhelmed by all this and trying to be too many things and kind of excelling at all this different, stuff that product could mean,
right?
By demystifying the role. And I do that, and it adjusts a little bit for every organization, but I do that by defining what makes great product teams. In the past, I've boiled it down to 6 things that make really, really great product teams, like customer focus, visible roadmap and prioritization, kind of the acknowledgement of, you are the connective tissue that brings together all these different stakeholders in the service of delivering for the customer. Et cetera, right? So I really kind of define that for the team to kind of hush the noise around that. It's based on product management principles. The second thing is I really encourage learning and inspiration from any number of sources.
Right.
I find that product people often feel like they get stuck, right? Like stuck in a cycle, stuck in a certain way of approaching their work, or stuck because they feel like their product exposure or product experience is limited. And I help this out by not hiding, but rather showcasing that there's this big product world out there doing really meaningful and interesting things. So I don't feed into the isolation. I actually help teams evolve within my company through encouraging this kind of external inspiration.
Yeah, no, I love that. I like the concept of going out and finding new things and learning from multiple sources. I think that's a great piece of advice there. So clearly the two of you are very successful and great leaders. So you got here for a reason, because you have gone out there, you've learned, you've adapted to certain things, but I'm sure you've also had great leaders for yourself in your life. So I want to talk about some top qualities of leadership and leaders and things like that. So specifically though, leaders that you've had in the past, what qualities have they, shown? Beth, we can start with you here.
Yeah, I think Dar and I both have touched on humility in different ways.
Yeah.
I think that I've been really blessed because I've had some really amazing leaders and I've learned so much. And I've learned some things that didn't work, but I learned a lot that did. And the fact that as a leader, it's really a privilege to be in that position and you're really there to serve your team. They're not there to serve you. You're there to serve them and help them be successful.
Right.
And staying humble about it is really important. Another thing that really, when you said inspire, that's the teams that I aim to grow and have is high performance teams that are inspired to do the right thing. In my career, it's been all about serving customers. And here at Sterling, it's clients and candidates. And you have to have, first of all, you have to have a genuine desire to help people. It can't be faked. And you really have to go to work every day knowing that what you do is going to make a difference. And so I had leaders that actually taught me the surfboard approach, which I kind of expanded on. But really what it is your folks, when they're dealing with issues and problems, are going to be like a surfer on a surfboard, and they're going to look down and see one shark. And that's going to scare them. And you have to be that calm in the storm, but you also have to be the drone that flies above those surfboards. And you have to see all the sharks and the whales and the dolphins, and you have to see everything for them and give them that 50,000 foot level and show them where they are in connection to the bigger picture. Because every team that I've kind of had the ability to go in and kind of fix some teams in my career, and every team that I've had, what the one thing that was lacking was probably trust and communication, but definitely they didn't know their role. They didn't know how important they were. They didn't know that their work that they do might be at this micro level, but it connects to the bigger picture in a certain way, and have someone show them the connection. So I think I've really learned humility, to be able to be strong and kind. I definitely am far from perfect, and I'm still learning every day. But I think really helping people connect to the bigger picture and why they're important to that role helps inspire them to do well. And I don't think people will do what you want. I think people will do what you expect. And you have to be real clear about those expectations. So
yeah.
that's what I've learned.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to wrap that up too. Expectations, things like that. And I really did like that for sure. So assuming that the two of you didn't have previous leaders in a past life, Dar, what have you learned from the leaders that you have had in the past? What are their top qualities?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm going to, Beth, I'm going to steal that. I like the whole shark and surfboard and drone thing. I'm totally.
It was a good one.
The best leaders I've had have really kind of shared some key qualities, but among them, it always felt like even when we were challenging each other, we were moving in the same direction. And I think that's a big part. A big part of that is really like creating a space where there isn't ambiguity around what they value and what they expected from me, right? Like that really opens up room for the real work to happen. And I actually wrote about this recently on LinkedIn because it's had kind of this profound impact on me from a leader that I admire. But it was great advice. He shared that like he went on this exploratory path to understand himself as a leader, right? Like what he values, what works for him, what doesn't work for him, kind of maybe where he's not as strong or areas that he's not as strong at, right? And he's going to need help with. And he wrote it down, right? And he actively shared that with everyone on his team. So I was like blown away by this. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's such a smart idea. So it took me a while to kind of define my values, right? And what drives me. But I did. And sometimes, with a leader, I find that there's a lot of guesswork to know what they're thinking and what really kind of motivates them and energizes them about the people around them. So I wanted to take that guesswork out of the equation so that we can have really productive working relationships, right? And I mentioned this kind of earlier, I touched on this earlier, like second and kind of on that same path is leaders help to almost curate all the noise out there that you hear about what a product team should or shouldn't be. So really what I learned from the best leaders is just to very clearly define what makes great teams and center any development work around those skills and characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I read your article on LinkedIn and I thought it was great. So I'm happy that, you got the inspiration from a former leader and to take that. So I really did think it was great. And I think it's a perfect segue into the next question I have for the two of you. And Dar, you can answer it first because it's, coming off of what your previous answer was. Yeah. So is there anything like any specific trait or practice, something that leaders should always be working on or try to improve? I understand that we're all not perfect, but there might be those little nuggets that there's always need to work on there. So you can go ahead and answer that one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And we are all works in progress all the time, right? But what I find is like the hardest challenge for many is actually the process of learning, of finding that inspirations from customers or others in the field or, and the reason that I find that that's hard is because with learning comes failure and with failure comes vulnerability. Mm-hmm. So to get really good at what we do, you need to have the curiosity to question what we know and how we do things, and then be willing to practice different approaches, right? So this is true for the people we lead, but it's even more important for those of us in a leadership position. You have to expose a team to new things. And that's going to mean that you need to try to push yourself in new directions, right? And that might create a lot of insecurity because you're asking your team to try things that you yourself haven't mastered yet. Right. So to help our teams evolve, we have to help them get comfortable with the uncomfortable, which means that we have to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's something, it's a work. If we do any like one thing, let's continue to work on that.
Yeah, I really like that point because I think something that I've always thought about in my future, becoming a leader, I've always thought I'm not going to be the expert in all of the areas, but a lot of the advice I've been giving is that, you build your teams to work up that expertise area. You're never going to have all the answers. You're never going to be the person that knows everything. So I really did like that point for sure. So Beth, key strategies, qualities that, you're consistently working on, trying to improve on.
Yeah, I know we've talked quite a bit about trust, and it's important to create a trusting team. But I think as a leader, I do like once a week, to be honest, I do a self-assessment on Friday afternoons. I take 10 minutes and I try to think of like, what do I need to do more of? How can I do this differently? How can I be more effective? And it usually, excuse me.
It's okay.
I need my tea. One sec.
The beauty of being live, anything can happen.
That's all right. So it really comes down to one of three things. It's either over communicate, right? Because things change in our world so fast, so rapidly that we have to over communicate, and we can't assume that one message suits all. So, I have sort of a teaching background, and I know that deer in the headlights look that people have sometimes with one message that you think everybody understood. So over communicate, find different ways to communicate for different styles of people that learn differently. I think the other thing that we hadn't really touched on that is so important is being dynamic as a leader. It's really easy to fall into this hole of being very, rigorous about things. And you have to realize that, again, you're not the smartest person in the room all the time just because you have a title. And you really need to be flexible. And so what I try to work on, and I actively do this, is I'll tell my team, listen, you know what? It's time to course correct. We thought this was going to go this way. It didn't really work out. So let's be dynamic, let's be flexible, and let's course correct now that we know better. So every time you learn, you adapt. And I think that is really, really important. And then finally, just, darn, would steal your line now. Creating a safe place is important. Like your employees need to feel safe, not just physically, but like mentally, emotionally. They need to feel safe to challenge themselves, to make mistakes, to feel like they're not going to get fired because they come up with an idea that you didn't like or they made an error. They need to know that it's okay because at least you were trying to think of things to improve on. So I think those three things are the things that I'm always checking on myself to say, am I really doing that enough? Am I doing it well enough? And being open to feedback because we don't know everything, and you don't know how good you are until you're brave enough to ask people how you're doing. So I asked my team how they're doing.
Yeah. No, and key takeaways from the two of your answers there is that, we can always be improving on things. We don't know everything. Building a strong team is a part of becoming a strong leader, because then you will know everything. And maybe at the end of the day, you might not still know everything with a strong team, but learning together and everything like that. So that was great. So I want to wrap up our conversation with one final topic, and it's very timely with everything that is going on right now. So over the past, I feel like we're coming on a year or so now, like coming over the past year or so, we've shifted into this new mentality, this new way of working, due to the global pandemic that we're facing. And there's a lot of other things going on in the world today where it really has shifted the way we work. So obviously, I'm sure there's ways that have shifted for you guys from a leadership standpoint. So I do wonder, have you shifted the way that you do lead today? Or have you seen, other leaders, whether it's in your professional network at Sterling, shift the way that they're leading right now, just given all of the uncertainty, the shift to remote work, things like that. So Dar, you can go ahead and kick us off with this question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And yeah, it does feel like we're coming up on a year. It's been so interesting. At the beginning, I wasn't really sure how this was going to work.
Right.
I wasn't sure how, without some kind of like in-person office connection that we could effectively collaborate. But I was wrong. And I think it actually made me more focused on maintaining connection. Mm-hmm. But what I learned most is this, right? Just because the way you work has changed, don't abandon your values. On the contrary, it's time to double down. And for me, good collaboration across teams is one of my core driving principles. As Beth, I'm sure you've had a flavor of that working with me a little bit. So rather than use this kind of like separation or this new way of working as an excuse to not live by that value, for example, I try to find ways of going deeper. Right. And, we launched a new product line this year with COVID testing. Right. So instead of kind of relying on some of the, current processes or ways of working, I said, no, we're going to come together in even a more robust and meaningful way. Right. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I kind of learned that I think was really important, and it's something that has helped me kind of develop, authentic leadership over the years, is just be honest. We're human, and sometimes leaders, and Beth, you touched on this, right? Like sometimes leaders feel this enormous pressure to inspire those around them and stay positive and optimistic. But part of that authentic leadership that I mentioned is also being transparent and honest. Mm-hmm. Look, this pandemic has taken a toll on me too, right? For example, I had to cancel a trip that I was really looking forward to. And I didn't hide that from the team. I didn't, present this stoic thing that, oh, I'm okay. I'm like, right. Yeah, you know what? I'm really sad today. I'm really sad today because I had to make this change. Okay, great. Now people know my state of mind. Let's get to work, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think that's key. And like, I've seen that a lot over the past couple of months too, just people being authentic, because there's no reason to hide things during this time. We've switched to just video, so we're seeing our faces constantly. Maybe people that I know when we were in office, there was some people that I would just call on the phone every day. Now, if I'm talking to them every day, I'm seeing their face every day. So things have shifted. There's no, again, reason to hide things. We're all going through this together. It's not like, that's not like a blanket statement. Like, it is true. Like, we are all going through this together. So I do appreciate that for sure. So Beth, you mentioned at the beginning of the show that you just started at Sterling when this all went down, and we took a huge shift as an organization, like many other organizations around the world. So what about you from a leadership standpoint? Have you changed any ways that you're leading your team? Have you seen other leaders make any changes?
It's funny because 2 days after I started, we were declared a pandemic in the US, or global, and we went to work from home. And these are basically call center folks who are used to being in the office and couldn't fathom necessarily working from home doing that job. And since I was only here for 2 days, I didn't have a lot of trust building yet with my team. They just were introduced to me. But I think that it's really goes in line. I think Dar and I are a lot alike in the way we think and lead, probably. But I think for me, it's take off the rose-colored glasses. Don't be fake with them. Don't try to pretend that you've got all the answers. Instead, acknowledge the pain points.
Yep.
Acknowledge what you're dealing with, what you're going to have to go through personally, professionally, in events like this. And then once you acknowledge the pain points, then realize that you're not alone. Right? That it's not just you and it's not just your team. I work with great people all throughout the company. There's a lot of people like Dar here and like you, Caitlin, here, that we're all working in the same direction for the same purpose, which is to make our customers' experience great. And I think that knowing you're not alone and knowing that you don't have to be the superhero, we don't wear capes, and we don't fly, but we have amazing people around us that we can count on. Everybody will help each other, and we'll get through this. So you do have to be positive, but be authentically positive. Like realize and show them we're not alone. We're going to get through this. And you know what? If we make some mistakes along the way, we will learn, we will adapt, and we will move forward. And I think that's been the key that I've used here until I was able to really get to know people and build rapport and trust and that. But I think just not sugarcoating it. Being real, being raw, acknowledging, showing them the pathway to get through it, and then leading that change. I think that's really the best you can do when you're in an unexpected situation.
Yeah, two great answers from the two of you, in regards to uncertain times. And it's good to see what you guys have been able to accomplish over the past couple of months. And, not just being able to get things out the door, but also to really help your teams, still be successful, talk through things, be open and honest. All of that matters right now. So I think it's great. You guys have done a lot over the past couple of months. So thank you for that. This has truly been a great conversation today. And I am so thankful to talk to the two of you. Before we wrap up with some final thoughts, I do want to remind our audience, if you are watching right now, you can ask questions in the comment section on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you do have any questions, please go ahead and submit them. But let's go ahead and grab some final thoughts here from our discussion today. So Dar, can you kick us off with some final thoughts?
No, thank you so much for listening and tuning in and coming to hear what we have to say. It's leadership is a lifelong evolution, right? And it's a commitment that we make. It's a commitment that we make for the teams that we lead. So don't be afraid to try new things out. Don't be afraid to go on that learning journey with your teams, and don't be afraid to go into uncharted territory and develop and evolve. But thank you, Caitlin, for setting this up. Really appreciate it, and appreciate learning from Beth as well along the way.
No, I think you guys did learn a lot from each other during the show. So, no, I think that's
true.
Yeah. Oh, and it just shows we've been having a great conversation. So Beth, final thoughts from you.
Well, this has been a privilege. I really appreciate it. I think it's great to share what we do. I love learning about how other people lead and ideas that I can get and incorporate. I think that, when it comes down to it, just try to do the right thing. Just try to do the right thing and realize that your job and your privilege of taking this leadership role isn't so you get a bonus and a title. Mm-hmm. It is so that you can help people be successful. Just like in Sterling, we help people work. And here we're helping people be successful. And know that that's a serious job. But even though it's serious, make sure your team laughs. Make sure your team has time to just be silly and connect. And, we have one life, and work is so important, but it's not everything. So just find time to laugh and enjoy the journey, because none of us are getting out of here alive, right? So just have a good time at it, and know that really, if you love what you do, it makes such a difference.
Such a great way to wrap up our conversation today. So again, thank you so much to Dar and Beth for joining us on this episode of Sterling Live. I know I took away everything. I'm going to watch this recording and jot down so many notes, because now I know I'm going to become a good leader because of you two. But thank you guys so much. Such a great conversation. Everyone who is watching right now, thank you for joining us, whether you are live or watching the on-demand version. We do go live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So I hope you can join us again next week. But for now, we will say goodbye. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.